Hey everyone, we are in chapter 4A of the textbook, so make sure you open the document called 4A Vocabulary so that you can get the vocab for this unit. Let's take a look at what's inside this chapter. First, you're going to learn a new verb tense. It's called the imperfect tense. And as you all know, with Spanish, we have our regulars, which follow the standard rules, and then we have our irregulars, and you all will learn both for this unit. We're also going to go over the indirect object pronouns. Now, you all have seen these before, but we're going to go over them a little more in depth, focusing on the verbs gustar, encantar, importar, and interesar. And finally, we'll review all of the tenses that you all have learned: present, preterite, present progressive, commands, and imperfect. In this unit, you will learn the last two new things for the school year, which would be the imperfect tense and the indirect object pronouns. Let's talk about the imperfect tense. It is a type of past tense. Now, you all have learned a different type of past tense, and we're going to go through the differences and make sure that you all can tell. First, the imperfect is a type of past tense used to describe actions that happened repeatedly in the past. Sometimes the start or end point is going to be unclear. For example, if I tell you that when I was younger, I always hung out with my grandparents. Right? So we know that's in the past. It's not currently happening, but we don't know exactly when that started, exactly when that ended. We don't know how many times it happened, but we do get the impression that it happened more than once. I said I always hung out with my grandparents. So that would be a clue that we're going to use the imperfect tense. In comparison, the preterite tense that you all already learned is a type of past tense used to describe an action that was started and completed at a specific point in the past. So in contrast with the imperfect example that I gave, for the preterite I could say, I hung out with my grandparents last week, right? We know that that happened last week. The starting and ending point were both last week, and it sounds like a one-time event as far as we know. So that's an example of a difference between the imperfect and the preterite tense. Here are some other examples where I'm taking the same verb in a very similar sentence and showing you how they could sound different in the imperfect versus the preterite tense. We're going to go over these sentences again at the end of this presentation. First example, I always ate lunch with her. We know that's in the past tense, it says ate, but we don't know when that started or ended or how many times it happened. It says always, so that tells us, okay, this happened repeatedly, we should be using the imperfect tense. The preterite example would be, I ate lunch with her yesterday. Also in the past, but it's got a clear starting and ending point. Second example, we used to ride bikes a lot. We don't know exactly when that started or ended, but we do know that it happened more than once and it's in the past. In comparison, we rode bikes that day. It's a specific time in the past, that's going to be preterite. And the last example, she woke up early every week. That happened in the past, but we don't know for how long or when it started and ended. With the preterite, she woke up early last week. It's a very specific example. Now let's take a look at how to form the imperfect tense. Starting off, let's look at the AR endings. Go ahead and take a second to pause the video and write these down. You will need to know these conjugations. With the AR verbs, just like in the other tenses that you all have learned, you're taking off the AR ending and you're adding in these conjugated endings that I have for you here. For the yo form, we have aba, tú, abas, él, ella, usted, aba, nosotros, ábamos con acento, make sure you get the accent mark, and ellos, ellas, ustedes, aban. Let's take a look at an example. This sentence says, yo jugaba con mi hermano todos los días. A couple things to note here. I have the word yo written in there because in the imperfect tense, the yo ending is the exact same as the él, ella, usted ending. Therefore, we do need to write the word yo to specify who we're talking about. Yo jugaba con mi hermano todos los días. Another thing to note is that we're using the verb jugar, and as you all know, in the present tense, there is a stem change in that verb. In the imperfect tense, we do not have stem changes. Make sure you make a note of that for yourself. Let's think about what this sentence can mean. Yo jugaba con mi hermano todos los días. One translation is, I played with my brother every day. Now, the every day lets us know that it was a repeated action, which is why we should be translating using the imperfect tense. Another way that we could translate this sentence is, I used to play with my brother every day. Both examples are perfect translations for this Spanish sentence. So make a note for yourself that imperfect can sound like played or used to play. A lot of times when I have students do translations with the imperfect tense, I'll give them a sentence like, we used to eat lunch together. And they'll say, Miss Danielle, how do we say used to? Right? So it's not a separate word that you're adding in here. It's the imperfect conjugation that implies the used to part. All right, let's take a look at the ER and IR endings. The ER and IR endings are the same, so you only have two sets of conjugations total for our regular verbs. The endings here are ia, ias, ia again, íamos, and ian. Notice that all of the conjugations for the ER and IR verbs have an accent mark over the I. Our first example here, yo escribía mis apuntes todos los días. Again, I have the word yo written in here because the yo form ending and the él, ella, usted endings are the same. So we need to have the word yo written in there to specify who we're talking about. Now take a second, based on our previous examples, and think of what this sentence could mean. Yo escribía mis apuntes todos los días. We could say, I wrote my notes every day. And we could also say, I used to write my notes every day. Both are perfect translations of this Spanish sentence. Now, let's go back to those examples that we looked at on the first slide when we were talking about the imperfect tense. Comparing imperfect with preterite, we have on the left, I always ate lunch with her. Yo siempre almorzaba con ella. Or on the right, I ate lunch with her yesterday. Yo almorcé con ella ayer. Middle example, we used to ride bikes a lot. Montábamos en bicicleta mucho. Or the preterite version, we rode bikes that day. Montamos en bicicleta ese día. And finally, she woke up early every week. Ella se despertaba temprano cada semana. Or the preterite version, she woke up early last week. Ella se despertó temprano la semana pasada. So notice some of the differences in the kinds of words that will clue you into using the imperfect tense. Words like always and a lot or every week, those time words would trigger you to use the imperfect, as opposed to yesterday, that day, or last week, the specific times that clue you in to use the preterite. Now for your assignment for today, you all need to translate these 5 sentences from English to Spanish. You're going to use the imperfect tense for every single one, and you're going to be using the vocabulary from chapter 4A. So make sure that you pull up the vocab sheet and type these into the text box below. Then when you submit these, I'll see that you did them on time, and I will go over these in my next video tomorrow.